Breaking news this Monday, January 6, 2026. Russia's recent strike on a U.S.-owned industrial facility in the Ukrainian city of Dnipro has highlighted Moscow's growing geopolitical weakness. That's according to a senior Ukrainian official. Andrei Kovalenko, who is the head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, said the attack on the Dnipro plant of U.S. agribusiness company Bunge was not accidental. He argued that Russian strikes on American-linked businesses in Ukraine are becoming, quote, increasingly systematic. I'm Alex Offense. Join me with Aria in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're taking an urgent deep dive into the source material you provided regarding the conflict in Ukraine.
Our mission today is focused on this recent, very high-stakes escalation targeting Western economic interests. And look, this wasn't just another hit on infrastructure. This was an attack that severely damaged a key American facility, spilling 300 tons of oil onto the roads of Dnipro. We need to dissect what this systematic targeting signals about the actual state of the war, about Moscow's political calculations, and, the credibility of the international peace efforts that are underway right now.
Before we unpack all that, if you're looking for this kind of in-depth analysis on the defense and strategy issues facing Ukraine and Europe, remember to subscribe. Subscribe to Defense Reports. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. Okay, so let's unpack this Bunge incident. The core of this deep dive is this drone attack on January 5th in Dnipro. It hits the American-owned Bunge global sunflower oil production plant. This is a massive agribusiness player, a key part of the global food supply chain. So why is this specific attack drawing such immediate and such explicit condemnation from Kyiv as being deliberate?
That word deliberate is absolutely key here, and Kyiv officials were unanimous in using it. And beyond the severe damage to the facility itself, the consequences were immediate and completely non-military. The drone attack caused a huge environmental and logistical problem. Dnipro's mayor, Boris Filatov, reported that 300 tons of oil spilled onto the main embankment road, so that rendered a vital transport artery unusable for days. And while Bunge did confirm no personnel were injured, which is good news, this immediate, large-scale disruption to civilian life, it's highly notable.
The spill really reinforces the civilian impact, but the argument for systematic targeting has to rest on more than just one event. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha stated, and I'm quoting here, "This attack was not a mistake, it was deliberate, as the Russians attempted to strike this facility multiple times." What other evidence supports this claim that it's a calculated pattern against American assets?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Sybiha wasn't just talking about Bunge. He specifically cited previous very high-profile strikes that hit American businesses. He mentioned the targeting of Boeing offices in Kiev and, critically, a large American electronics manufacturer called Flex.
Oh, right, the Flex plant that was in Zakarpattia.
Exactly, in the western region, historically considered safer and far from the front lines. And the cumulative data is just stark. Sybiha noted that approximately half of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce members in Ukraine have suffered some degree of damage.
Half?
Half. Some degree of damage or destruction to their facilities during the full-scale war.
So, targeting Western investment, it's not collateral damage. This is economic warfare. You hit sunflower oil, a major Ukrainian export. You hit a large electronics manufacturer. It sends a clear message that no Western economic presence is safe. Doesn't matter how far it is from the front.
Precisely. Ukraine sees this as a direct challenge to the Western financial commitment to their long-term stability. President Zelensky underscored this before when he pointed out the Flex factory just produced, everyday items like coffee machines. The strikes seem designed not to destroy military capability, but to undermine the very infrastructure, logistical, financial manufacturing that keeps the Ukrainian economy tied to the West. The goal is to maximize economic pain.
And that idea of instability brings us right to the diplomatic stage, this deliberate targeting of a major U.S. industrial interest. It didn't just happen in a vacuum. It happened during these high-stakes diplomatic pushes for peace led by President Donald Trump's administration. Yeah. So what signal does Kyiv believe Russia is sending to the White House with this Bunge strike?
That really raises the important question, doesn't it? Is Moscow actively trying to sabotage the peace efforts, or are they just trying to unilaterally redefine the terms of what a peace effort even looks like? Sybiha's claim was that Putin's attacks on American interests show complete disregard for peace efforts led by President Donald Trump. Okay. Yeah. The timing alone suggests contempt for Washington's role as a mediator.
Let's lay out that specific diplomatic context, because The talks leading into January 2026 were really intense.
They were. This wasn't just some distant signaling. We saw high-level activity starting back in August 2025. President Trump discussed the war with Putin in Alaska.
Right, and that was immediately followed by a big meeting with President Zelensky and European leaders at the White House.
And then even more recently, just weeks before the Bungie attack in November 2025, you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner. They held 4 hours of talks in Florida with senior Ukrainian officials, including Rustem Umerov, the head of Ukraine's Security Council.
And those Florida talks were explicitly framed around a peace deal that would ensure Ukraine remains sovereign and independent. End quote. So if the U.S. is pushing for sovereignty and peace, and Russia's response is to bomb an American-owned food plant, how does that undermine the diplomatic effort?
It creates immense political pressure back in Washington. By systematically targeting American capital and facilities, Moscow is essentially telling the U.S. administration that its diplomatic leverage and the safety of its investments are contingent on concessions. It directly challenges the credibility of any peace process that Washington sponsors. It forces the American administration to confront a direct, tangible cost for staying involved.
It's a very high-stakes way of communicating. Trump himself said it back in August 2025, that Putin talks nice and then he bombs everybody. And Moscow seems to be reinforcing that exact perception by hitting a U.S. asset while the negotiators are basically still in the room.
Yeah, and the Ukrainian message back to the international community is clear. Moscow's refusal to reciprocate constructive steps toward peace has to come at a serious cost. They're urging stronger air defense support, more sanctions. They see these attacks as undeniable evidence that Russia is just stalling negotiations.
Stalling while hoping its larger army can just grab more land.
And draining Ukraine's economic resilience at the same time.
Okay, beyond the economic messaging, let's widen the lens a bit. Let's look at the operational patterns on the ground. The sources detail other major Russian strikes from that same January 4th and 5th wave. What else was hit in that mass assault? And what does the pattern of targets tell us about Russia's current priorities?
What really stands out in that wider wave is the simultaneous and very clear targeting of essential civilian facilities, right alongside what Russia might try to label as dual-use infrastructure. The very same night the Bungie oil plant was struck, Russian forces also hit the medical center.
A private hospital.
A private hospital in Kyiv City's Obolonsky district.
Targeting medical facilities and essential logistics hubs in the same wave. That really reinforces the argument that the true priority is just inflicting maximum societal cost.
Absolutely. The hospital strike killed at least one patient and injured others. It forced the immediate evacuation of 16 patients. We also know another civilian was killed in Kozukivka in the Kyiv region that same night. And yet, Russia's defense ministry maintained its standard justification. They claimed these actions targeted enterprises of the Ukrainian military-industrial complex, drone factories, and so on.
The contrast is just. It's stark. A hospital versus a military command center, the flex electronics factory versus a weapons production complex. This gap between their justification and the reality on the ground seems to be a key part of Kyiv's case.
It is the foundation of the systematic targeting claim, and you need to appreciate the sheer scale of the operation that night. The Ukrainian Air Force reported the January 4th to 5th wave alone involved 9 Iskander-M and S-300 missiles, and a staggering 165 long-range drones, including Shahed and Gerbera types, launched from multiple locations.
165 drones. In a single wave. That volume is just... It's hard to even comprehend.
It speaks to an enormous resource commitment. Now, Ukrainian air defenses did intercept an impressive 137 of those drones.
Which is a huge testament to their mobile air defense crews.
It really is. But 26 still struck 10 locations. And the fact that the successful strikes targeted high-value civilian infrastructure, like the hospital and the American plant, shows the strategy isn't to overwhelm air defenses everywhere. It's to force saturation at key, strategically valuable non-military sites.
And that focus on saturation leads us right to the military technical side, which is always an important element of our deep dives. The sources reveal Russia is constantly innovating its strike capabilities. It shows they're preparing for a long war, regardless of any diplomatic signals.
We have to discuss the latest confirmed modification. It significantly changes the risk calculus for Ukrainian air defense operators. Recent intelligence, published just before the Bungie strike, revealed a downed Shahed drone that had been adapted in a remarkably sophisticated way.
A technical hybrid. Tell us more. What exactly did they attach to a slow, Loitering munition.
They're essentially turning the loitering munition into a remotely launched short-range air defense system. This downed Shaheed was equipped with a man-portable air defense system, a man-pads, specifically a Verba man-pads, which has an effective operational range of about 6 kilometers.
That almost sounds counterintuitive. Why would you combine a very slow propeller-driven drone with a very fast heat-seeking missile? What's the tactical advantage?
The advantage is reconnaissance and placement. The drone acts as a slow, high-altitude surveillance and positioning platform. The modification includes a specialized camera and a radio modem for remote control, so instead of the drone crashing as a munition, it flies into an area where Ukrainian air defense aircraft like low-flying fighter jets or helicopters that support ground forces are operating. The missile, the man-pads, is then remotely launched to fire in front of the drone, targeting those jets and helicopters.
So the drone becomes a disposable, forward-deployed missile launch platform. It's far cheaper and less risky than using a manned aircraft to position a missile. This is a critical development.
It is. This highlights Moscow's wider, sophisticated effort to maximize drone capabilities, specifically aiming to degrade the mobile components of Ukraine's air defense. And this requires significant engineering. I mean, you have to combine the power requirements, the stabilization, the remote firing mechanism of a fast missile onto a slow platform. It just shows that even amidst peace talks, Russia is investing heavily in new, unconventional ways to undermine Ukraine's ability to defend its airspace.
To really grasp the strategic gravity of this bungee attack and the Ukrainian claim of systematic targeting, we have to place it in the context of the history of destruction in Dnipro. This is a city that has been relentlessly, brutally attacked since March of 2022. That history casts a long shadow over every new incident.
That history confirms the long-term, cumulative strategy of pressure. The human cost alone is just overwhelming. Dnipro has seen over 140 civilian deaths and more than 960 injuries since 2022. These are not isolated events. We saw the sheer civilian trauma in January 2023 when a single missile strike on a residential building killed 46 people.
I remember that.
And then again in May 2023 when a strike hit an outpatient clinic, killing 4 and injuring 30, including very young children.
It's a sustained campaign against the social fabric. It's hitting everything from homes to hospitals. But when we talk about this economic and logistical warfare, there are 2 examples that directly connect to what the bungee incident represents.
Yes, that focus on essential logistics is key. You can look at the Pivdamash missile plant strike back in July 2022, a historical military target, but contrast that with more recent, purely humanitarian and economic strikes. Just weeks before this bungee attack, in December 2025, a massive strike hit the BADM warehouse.
And what was the significance of the BADM warehouse?
It was a critical humanitarian and medical logistics hub. That attack destroyed an estimated $110 million worth of medicines.
$110 million.
Yes, which represented about 30% of Ukraine's entire monthly national supply. The International Rescue Committee called the facility a critical hub, saying they lost supplies intended for 30,000 people. So hitting the medicine supply chain with BADM and then the food supply chain with bungee. It's a clear multi-sector economic strategy.
And we can't forget the sheer broad trauma that's imposed on the city that doesn't fit neatly into military or economic boxes. Back in June 2025, that rare daytime attack killed 21 and injured 279. It damaged 19 schools, 10 kindergartens, and even the Dnipropetrovsk House of Organ and Chamber Music.
So when Kyiv officials talk about these attacks being systematic, this is what they're referring to, this catalog. A sustained, multi-year campaign of strikes hitting historical military targets, yes, but also maternity hospitals, schools, and essential logistics hubs like the Bungie oil plant and the BADM medicine warehouse. This harrowing picture just demonstrates continuous strategic pressure aimed not just at the Ukrainian military, but at crippling the population's resilience and the foundation of their economy.
So, what does this all mean when we synthesize the source material? The attack on the American-owned Bungie plant is far more than just another drone strike. It's a political message. It's a highly visible continuation of Moscow's strategy to degrade Ukraine's economy and social fabric, while simultaneously undermining U.S.-led diplomatic paths.
Yeah.
The message seems clear. Western interests are targets, and peace proposals will not deter Russia's immediate military and economic goals.
And this raises a really important question for you, the listener. If Russia openly dismisses high-level diplomatic efforts by systematically targeting established Western interests, effectively setting a tangible cost for Washington's mediation, what non-military leverage is left for the international community to change Moscow's strategic calculation?
You've been listening to Defense Report, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.